guys!
In today's video, we're going to be talking about university and answering all your questions. Everything to do with admissions, getting in, which course to choose, where to study. All these questions have been submitted by you guys. So here is the structure of today's video. First, we're going to be talking about NTU, and then we're going to be specifically talking about our course, PPGA, and then we'll get into the admission process, tips, and then career prospects, hall life, and then any extra advice we have for you guys.
So my name is Jong Han, and obviously you guys know Megan, and we are both year 3 students in Public Policy and Global Affairs, so PPGA, that's what it stands for. We come from different backgrounds, so I actually came from Poly, I was from Ngee Ann Poly, I did Mass Communication. Megan came from SOTA, and that's the IB program.
Let's get right into the first question, which is how do we find our life in NTU?
I think if you're from Poly, life in university won't be that much different. Everything is self-paced learning, which means no one's gonna handhold you like in secondary school. It's not like a full day thing. So once you're done with your class, you can go home. So there's a lot of independence in that sense.
My experience transitioning from IB to uni actually wasn't that hard. Or in SOTA, a lot of our teachers told us that IB is the toughest you will have it, and then everything else after that will be easy. And I can honestly testify to that. I enjoy uni way more than I did IB just because I could specialize and choose the modules that I actually want to do and the degree that I want to study. A lot of the skills that I picked up in IB, like critical writing, research, that is all things that will really give you the edge in uni. From my observations as well as some feedback from my profs, they do say that JC kids struggle a little bit more than Poly and IB kids would, just because the style of learning is very different. Just like what Jong Han said, a lot of it is self-directed. You don't get things like rubrics on how to write your essays or like past year papers. Like there's none of that. You have to take responsibility for your own learning, and the only way the teachers will help you is if you go up to them and ask for that help. But right now, let's move on to the PPGA aspect of this video, where we'll get a bit more into like the course, the content, the format of learning. I think like the most common question that I get is, why did I choose PPGA? It's quite a funny story. So I didn't know what I wanted to study when I was getting ready for admissions to uni, and I was just like swiping on Tinder, and then I saw somebody whose entire Tinder profile was like his FYP projects, like all to do with political science, and then he was like, like let me know if you have any thoughts on my thesis project. So I started and I was like, like are you studying politics? Like sounds really cool. And he was from SMU, by the way. So he was like, yeah, I can actually just send you my notes. So he sent me all his year 1 notes, and then I looked through it and I realized that I was so interested in whatever was in his notes, and that was pretty much how I found out that I wanted to pursue politics.
I think I chose PPGA for one. Let's backtrack back to Poly. So in Poly, I did Mass Communication, right? It was the introduction to politics, and we are always analyzing news stories, talking about news, following the news. When I was in year 3, that was when the presidential election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton was going on. I remember following it very actively and said, hey, this is something that is quite interesting. When it came to choosing a degree, I thought, okay, I've already done journalism and mass communication. The skills I learned there are quite good. Probably I don't want to learn them again in another environment. In deciding what to do in the future, I decided, okay, I'm interested in politics, I'm interested in current affairs, so it was a natural choice for me. And in fact, I will say one thing is that if you think you know politics right now, I think you are in for a wake-up call when you go to school and when you go to class, because it's really like a whole new world.
Okay, and that's a good segue into our next question, which is like, what is the content of our classes and how are they formatted? So in political science, you will find 4 branches. The first is comparative politics, public administration, international relations, and the last one is my favorite, which is hall theory.
So comparative politics is basically comparing, I guess, politics and political systems, political structures, political trends across different countries. Some of the mods that you'll take under comparative politics includes politics in Southeast Asia or comparative politics in Asia. For example, I did comparative politics in Asia, and an essay that I wrote for the class was comparing the political Islamization in Malaysia and Indonesia. So that's an aspect of comparative politics, where you compare a phenomena or a trend across 2 countries. Then there is international relations, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. Basically, international relations deals with foreign policy. Things we learn is like American foreign policy. Me and Megan took that class together. I did Chinese foreign policy and I did Singapore foreign policy. I'm super passionate about foreign policy. I just think it's really interesting to see how power changes, how power flows. You will learn things like, for example, why the US presence in Asia is so important. Things like Singapore foreign policy. You will learn about how we decide our policy, who are the key policy makers. You will learn theories for sure, international relations theories. So those kind of things you can't really find outside on your own.
How do you think comparative and IR actually like relate to your everyday life or their everyday life?
How it will impact you is it's going to broaden your perspectives. So when you open a piece of news and you see, oh, US-China relations, you can understand and make the determination for yourself, like what is the cause for these issues, right? What is going on? What is the disagreement about?
I think it's also important to realize that news can be partisan or news can be biased. A very simple example would be like when you're following the US politics. If you look at US news sites, outlets like Fox is obviously more conservative.
Outlets like MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, all these are more liberal.
So I would say don't be afraid to take mods that you don't know much about. Like personally, I didn't know that much about American foreign politics or even domestic politics, but I really wanted to learn, so I went ahead and took it anyway. And I think that it really helped me deepen my understanding of US politics. And now when I actually read the news, when I keep up, I'm not just absorbing what they tell me, but I have the facilities to kind of make my own decisions and critically think about all these events around the world. Okay, so besides those two parts of political science, we also have public administration and political theory. For public administration, the topics that you deal with are a little bit more to do with how the system functions, for example, bureaucracies. Or we even have like special topics, so like healthcare, e-voting, basically a lot of the technical parts of policy making. A lot of times we see things like Singapore's rolling out e-payments nationwide, or even budgeting. Talk about how these things function, like how does the budget process work, what goes inside and what are the things that you consider when you make a budget, and not only just in Singapore but overseas. For political theory, which is my favorite, what we do is basically political philosophy. So we learn a different range of philosophers like Confucius, Gandhi,
Thomas Hobbes.
Yes, it definitely requires a lot of readings, and the readings are not simple. But I will say that Pol Theory are the mods that push me the most, because you're really going down to the fundamental questions of politics, like what is democracy, what is a society, what are ideologies. Besides the very basic political theory, if you do choose to take more Pol Theory classes, you also go into very interesting ways of perceiving political thought. So I would say that it gives you a very good baseline to work off and think about bigger questions that you will face while studying political science. So now that we've covered the 4 basic categories of Pol Theory, we'll go into how PPGA classes are formatted in NTU.
All of the core classes in year 1 will be in a similar format. So the format will be usually like a 2-hour lecture and a 1-hour tutorial.
So we have level 1 to 4 mods, and when you go on to the later years like level 3, level 4 mods, it tends to be seminars instead. So it's a 3-hour to 4-hour straight class where there might not necessarily be a lecture, but you go in and you're ready to discuss, you're ready to bounce ideas off each other based on the readings for that week. So with this format in mind, I would say that class part is definitely a very important part of our PPGA course, right from year 1 all the way to year 4. We do have a percentage of the grade that goes to class participation, but aside from the grades, I think class part is personally a super important part of my learning journey, right? Because it is where you test your ideas and your thoughts, and you get to debate it with your classmates and even with your profs. When you do your readings and you go to class with questions, with ideas, that is when you will really gain the most out of lessons that you're taking. In articulating the questions that you have and the thoughts that you have, right, you also pick up on the way that you speak about politics technically, and that helps a lot with like your essay writing or your presentations to class. So in NTU we have a range of different ways that we can get assessed, and the main difference is that in year 1 and 2 you do get written exams at the end of the year, whereas year 3 and 4 you don't get as much of that, and it's more based on the research papers that you write.
When you're in year 1 and year 2, you will have smaller essays like 1,500 words or 2,000 words. You may have some mini quizzes, in-class written essays, midterms. For level 1 mods, a bulk of the grade is the final exam.
Yes.
When you're in the exam, basically it's like 2 essays, 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Maybe I can give one example of a question that you will get. So one of the key level 1 mods that you have to take is actually Politics of Singapore, taught by a really wonderful prof.
Walid, shout out to you!
Yes. And so some of the questions you will get is, what explains the PAP's hegemony or dominance in Singapore politics? Moving on to the level 2 mod, some of them have exams, some of them don't have exams. You will see more presentations, longer essays, maybe this time about 2,000 to 3,000 words.
I think even the presentation duration will differ. Maybe in your level 1, 2 mods it will be like 10 to 15 minutes, whereas when you go up to like level 3, level 4, it can span up to almost like 50 minutes.
Yes.
Of the level 1 to 4 mods, this is how we split up our modules, right? So by year 1 and year 2, you should have already completed like your level 1, level 2 mods, and once you hit year 3, you would mostly be taking level 3, level 4. So we are year 3, sem 2 right now, and we have basically exhausted like all level 1, 2, 3 mods, and we are solely focusing on level 4 mods. So Jong Han, you want to give some examples of level 1 to 4 mods?
So level 1 mods are all the foundation mods which you will need to take and clear by year 1. When you move on to year 2 and year 3 and year 4, that's when you have more flexibility in choosing the kind of mods you want to do. There is no fixed specialization. For example, like me, I love international relations and foreign policy. Usually all the mods based on that. Megan, she loves political theory, so she does all those political theory mods, and she mixes it up with some IR mods. Or you can do a jumble of all. You know, it doesn't affect the kind of degree you get.
Yeah, it doesn't affect your career choices either.
Yes.
Definitely like go according to your interests, because each sem is like 13 weeks.
You don't want to do something you're not interested in.
And you'll burn out so quickly.
You will burn out.
But I think we would definitely recommend to like do a range, just because I'm interested in pol theory. Like I don't exclusively take pol theory mods. It's really important that I get a good range, because all of these contribute to a more holistic education. Okay, so now that we've gone over kind of the format and the content of the classes in NTU, we're going to answer why we chose NTU PPGA specifically and not pol science in SMU or NUS. So the reason why I chose NTU was because I knew right from the get-go that pol science was what I wanted to do. I didn't want to go through like the first 2 years of FASS, like taking a variety of mods before specializing. In NTU, you do get that range as well, and that is with our electives. So I felt like I could get that same kind of a holistic education in NTU whilst also specializing right from the start. And I'm really glad that I did that, because studying politics for the last 3 years has been one of the best things for me, and it has grown my mind so much and opened my eyes to what's going on in this world. Specifically why I chose NTU as well was because of the module offerings. It offered a lot more from each category of political science, and that was really good for me, especially when I was at a time where I obviously didn't know that much about pol science yet, and I didn't know like which category I would want to focus on. I think FASS would be a really good choice if you kind of know that you want to do humanities and social sciences, but you don't know where exactly, and you want to have the chance to explore different faculties, take mods from a wide range of HSS mods. But because for us, we knew we wanted to do pol science, NTU was pretty much like a very easy choice. Okay, so in NTU, besides taking like your main degree, you also have a few other options, which are double degree, double major, and second major, and a minor. So what I'm doing is a minor in sociology. So with a minor, what you do is you take 5 modules from that course, and then you graduate, and it'll say a degree in PPGA with a minor in sociology. From what I've heard, like a minor doesn't really affect like your job prospects. It doesn't make you like a better candidate, because of course it's a very introductory 5 mods. Why I chose to take a minor in sociology was because I wanted to explore that part of academia, and I felt that it would contribute to my learnings in PPGA. Take that question about whether you should take a PPGA minor, and I think that is something that you definitely can consider. It's basically the same rationale. If you're interested in it, you want to get priority for the mods, a minor is a good option, but it is not necessary. You can also take PPGA mods as an elective, but not declare it as a minor. And I think maybe something else that we can add is that you don't only have to do a minor like within your school. You can take, for example, like a minor in comms in WikiWe, in humanities like econs, philosophy. So yeah, it's pretty open in that sense. And I would say that the benefit of taking minor would just be that you get priority for the courses that you are bidding for, as opposed to like an elective where like you may or may not get the mod. Let's dive into the important part of this video, which is admissions, and I know a lot of you guys are waiting for this.
Yeah, I think by the time this video is out, the admission period is over, but it's okay. You can save it for next year.
Share it with your friends.
Yes.
So, our admission process was a little bit different because he was from Poly and then I did IB. I also got directly admitted, whereas he had to go through an interview. So interview tips and process, we'll go through it with you. Basically what I did was fill out the admission form, write my personal statement, and then they wrote back a letter saying that I got admitted. And what I would advise for the personal statement is that just be specific. I didn't go with the whole, yes, I love pol science and reading the news, current affairs. I was very specific. I said I want to come in and I want to fill in the gap in academia, which is the intersect between political science and arts, especially that in Singapore. And then I explained why I felt like that was an important gap to fill up and how I wanted to achieve that through an education in PPGA.
My admission process was slightly different, not just because I was from Poly, but because I think my GPA wasn't as high as it was required to be. So I had a 3.5, and that wasn't enough because PPGA at the time also was already 3.6. So for me, I received a rejection. Then I went to appeal. So this is a tip. If you get rejected, they will not tell you to appeal.
Yes.
You got to find the appeal yourself. So I went to appeal. You appeal, they ask you to write why you want to be in the course, and I just wrote why I was interested in it. Then I got an interview. Be interviewed by a professor. After I finished the interview, about a week later, and I got a response that I was accepted.
And how was the interview process like?
So the interview process was kind of simple. Basically, they just call you down and a professor will interview you. So for PPGA, there's no like written examination. Just go into the room, you sit down with the professor, and he or she will ask you a few questions. Some questions I was asked was basic things like why I wanted to study PPGA, what do I find interesting about it, how I think this will help my future. So these are some questions you can think about. You know, they're quite generic questions that I think most interviews will ask you.
Did you like prepare for the interview or
For
just
sure.
went in and you winged it?
No, for sure. Obviously, I wanted it really badly. For me, it was kind of like a last-ditch thing. Like, if I didn't get this, then I was probably going to go to work. I wasn't going to go to uni at all.
Ooh.
So I will give 3 tips for anyone who's going for this interview or for actually any interview. Number 1 is do your basic research. I think that will really show whether you're interested or not. Things you can look out for is the kind of courses they offer, the kind of electives they offer, how long the program is. Number 2 is I think you should think about why you are really interested in the course. Don't just say something like, I just want to study politics because I'm interested.
I think it helps if you kind of have a few focuses. So for me, obviously, that was art and politics. Going in with an idea of certain current affairs that you're interested in. These are all things that will show the interviewer that you do have a distinct interest in politics and that you do want to pursue it even further. What they're looking for wouldn't necessarily be somebody who is already knowledgeable about politics, right? Because this isn't something that you cover in school.
Precisely.
But it is just about like the potential you have as a student and how you would add to the student body in general.
Advice number 3 would be to ask questions because I think nothing shows your interest than asking a question.
When you ask a question, right, it's not just about showing that you're interested, it is about showing that like you have given it proper thought and that you are hungry for it. You're so hungry for it that you want to know more. You're going to take the opportunity and get the most out of it.
The question I asked was what we learned going to be partisan? Was it going to be what the professor teach based on his, you know, like personal views or political inclinations? Okay? And the answer was no. Based on our experience, the answer is also no. You'll be quite shocked by some of your professors' political inclinations from what they teach in class and from what they are in real life.
Viewers out there be like writing down this is what you're going to ask in the interview. So I know a lot of you are curious as well about the career prospects that you have in PPGA.
Common misconception, or I think a question we're always asked is when we tell people we're studying political science, they're like, oh, are you going to be an MP next time?
You want to work for the government?
I mean, that is an option. I don't think that's the only career path. Neither is a government job the only career path. What social sciences degree is about teaching you how to have critical thinking. It's important for any job out there. So I know people who graduated from PPGA, some work in the government, yes, but people go on to become journalists. They work in advertising, media, in tech companies. A social science degree is broad-based because it is not a fixed technical skill.
I actually did speak to my prof briefly about this. If you take a look at the annual Joint Graduate Employment Survey, you will find that within humanities and social sciences itself, the difference in pay grade is actually not that drastic. It is literally a matter of like hundreds of dollars, which is why I said earlier in the video, right, if you're interested in it, just take it. The only thing that will maybe be a very drastic pay difference will be computer science versus humanities. But if you identify that humanities is your passion and you want to study something within it, just go ahead and pursue your interest. So a sidebar to that would be internships. In PPGA, we don't have like a semester where you have to go on internship. That is the case for certain other courses like Wiki Comms or like business. So usually for PPGA students or humanities, social science students, what we do is we take an internship during one of our summers. For me, some of you might already know, I did an internship at a startup, Zanium, where I really did like a lot of things like from marketing, product development, very broad, that your course does not really affect where you can have an internship at. As long as you know you have the skills necessary in the internship position, all should be fine. Jong Han's internship experience does tie in a little bit more with PPGA, so why don't you share about that?
My first internship was actually at a digital marketing agency. There was not much application of directly what I learned. My more interesting internship was actually last year, 2020, during summer. I was a journalist with Today Online. I got the internship at this very special time because I got to cover GE 2020. So that directly tied in with what we learned in school and what I learned in poly. So it was a perfect marriage of my degree and my diploma. I think it was an invaluable experience.
Our advice would be that yes, definitely intern during the summer. 4 years, that would mean 4 summers, right?
Yes.
You can pick up something that doesn't relate to PPGA, so like what we did was like marketing, but then also take the time to consider like where you want to be at the end of your degree. So if it's government sector, then try out for a government related internship. Definitely pick up an internship because it is an environment where you will learn beyond what is in classes, beyond textbooks. book, it is like real life application, which is super valuable, not just for your personal growth, but also when you're out there looking for a full-time job. Okay, so now we're going to a little bit more of a fun section, which is our co-curricular activities. For us, that would be like Hall and SU. I stayed in Hall for a year, and the main reason was basically that I stay in the East and school's all the way in the West. It takes me 2 hours one way, which is like 4 hours in a day just spent on traveling. But I think my general Hall experience wasn't great. I did not enjoy it. It's an experience that like you won't really get anywhere else. So I know a bunch of my friends, they just stay in Hall for like 1 sem, they try it out, if they don't like it, then they just move back home. I was also involved in some activities in Hall, like jam band, which is basically just like, I don't know, singing and jamming with instruments, yeah. And besides Hall, we were both also in SU.
Which means Students'
Oh
Union,
yes,
by the way.
I was serving in the Student Integration Committee. I did social media, publicity.
I was in digital marketing, so all the things you see in the NTU Student Union's Instagram page will be done by our team.
Yep.
So the visuals, the designs, things like that.
Generally, my experience in SU was pretty alright. I mean, it was nothing big. I mean, your day-to-day workload obviously increases, right? Because you're taking on an extracurricular activity. 1 term in the SU was like enough for me. I wouldn't go back to it again. I think for both of us, it was just something try out, like get a bit more involved in school.
To help out friends.
Yeah, to help out friends, to help out like the school body in general.
Yep.
After serving for 1 term, we kind of felt like, okay, we had exhausted like our growth there and we didn't have anything else we wanted to do, so we left.
When doing something like this, you should think about what you want to gain from it.
Yep.
If you have the free time to commit as well,
Yes.
and if that's something that you think you'll be interested in doing, then a CCA like Students' Union is something you can consider. But not to say this is the only CCA in
Yeah,
school.
for sure. If I'm being honest, I don't think your co-curricular activities do that much for your resume. It's just somewhere you can really go and like connect with people as well as like develop skills or like apply skills, and that is the case for like any school activity. Okay, so we are nearing the end of our video. I think we just want to wrap up with some words of advice. One of you guys did ask about readings, like how to get through them, especially if you have a lot and they are conceptually heavy. I think this problem is super relevant if you're doing any social science, because a lot of times it's not just about the lectures. The content that you get in the readings, right, will really help you to be more engaged in class, ask smarter questions. So the advice that I would give is to learn how to read smart. A lot of times, all you need to do is grasp the main points, and then all the things in between is kind of just like evidence or explanation. How you can read smart, a tip from Walid, is read the abstract, the introduction, the first line of every paragraph, and then the conclusion. And then that should give you like the gist of the material. And this is not to say that the explanations are not important, they really are. This is just a way for you to get a gist of what the article is saying before you go in, so that you can tackle all the concepts quickly.
I think another piece of advice I would give is also to actually do external reading. Kept up with the news every day from a variety of news sources, outside subscriptions. So for example, I'm subscribed to like the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, South China Morning Post, and things like that. And take advantage of the school resources actually, because they do have some of these applications, they have actually purchased it for you, so you can actually read it for free.
Yep. So right now we want to share 3 tips for you guys which are applicable no matter what course you're studying. And the first tip would be to find friends.
It is just good to have a good relationship with the people around you. You don't have to be friends with everybody in your cohort, but find a few good fixed friends. I think it will go a long way in terms of mental and emotional support, and even physical support of doing work together.
Yeah, I know like a lot of you guys are wondering like how do we make friends in uni, especially when a lot of the classes like aren't fixed. My tip that I employed when I was in year 1 is basically, you see someone interesting or like somebody said something interesting in class, just go up to them and talk to them like, hey, hi, I'm Megan, you are? And you're like, oh, like, hi, I'm Jong Han.
And like your point was very interesting, and
I love what you said in class. Is this something that you believe in, or like where did you read that? Like where did you learn about that? Like I would love to know more as well.
So you no longer need weird icebreakers because you guys have a common topic to talk about already.
Exactly. Like you guys are already in the same course, right?
Precisely.
Like you definitely have common ground. Like even just go out and be like, hey, like why you choose this course? Like that is a perfect like opening, right?
Yep.
And then take the time to really get to know them. Like, hey, let's have lunch together after this mod, or like, hey, let's sit together in tutorial. I think it took the both of us about a good year and a half to find out like who are the people that we can depend on in uni.
Yes.
Right. And then speaking of depending on people in uni, I think that brings us to tip number 2, which is be generous with your learnings and with your notes. Don't look at uni as like a zero-sum game. Like, oh, if I take like my lecture notes, I can only keep them for myself, because if I share them with someone else, then they will do good, and then the bell curve will be thrown off. Like, don't look at it that way, right? It's so important to just go in with generosity. If somebody's like sick in class, be like, do you want me to send you my notes from class? Like, are you okay? If you see somebody struggling with an assignment, just be like, hey, do you want me to like read your essay for you, right?
Personal experience, because I didn't do my readings for political theory in year 1 introduction. When it was coming towards the exam, I was like, oh my gosh, Megan, can you send me your notes? And she actually did send me all her notes, and at that point we weren't even that close friends yet. So to me it was, hey, I'm not so close to this person, and she could share all her notes with me when I hear of these rumors of school being a zero-sum game. So she really showed me it's okay to be generous, and when I help friends with their essays and whatsoever, my grade doesn't suffer because of it, and their grade improves, and just a happier environment, a healthier environment for everyone to learn.
So I think these two tips like really go hand in hand. Last tip would be to do with time management, especially if you are doing what I do, which is working on the side. Time management is so important. Going into uni, right, it's really not like any other form of school. You really get a taste of what it feels like to balance an outside life and school. You just realize that it's not possible to finish all your readings and do all your assignments every single moment of every single day. The studying will never end unless you say like, hey, I need a break. Being consistent about your work and about your personal life, about rest, is super helpful. To wrap things up, right, what I would say is that uni life is what you make of it. There's so much freedom in like what you study and how you spend your time. It is really up to you, right, whether you want your uni experience to be good or whether you want it to be like a torturous 4 years. Uni is pretty much for most people the last phase of education that you will have, and the last phase where you have like the freedom to choose your schedule and not go to like a 9 to 5 job every Monday to Friday, right? Really make the most of the 4 years in like learning, in having like this environment of profs who can like teach you and lift you up, and friends who will be there along the way for you, and then any other like job opportunities, like wanting to explore things outside of your degree or things that you feel you may not get to do when you start working full-time. Like, this is the time to go and do that. So with that, I think we have reached the end of our video. I know this one was a bit longer, but we did want to really go in depth and answer all your questions. But if you have any more questions, please feel free to DM us. I will put our handles down here. You can always DM us. Maybe we will come back with a second video, so leave a comment if that's what you want to see. Thank you so much, Jong, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for helping out all our viewers, and we will see you guys next time. Bye!